Thanks, Joel. Rogers, Mr. Staffieri, on the testimony we've heard today, Rogers received a better financial offer than the deal that they ultimately arrived at with Videotron. Now, I want the best deal for competition in a sector that sorely needs competition. So walk us through, why would Rogers accept less money in this deal unless it also meant less competition?
As I said earlier, we went through a process that was very comprehensive and robust. We looked at the criteria that was in front of us, and this government, the minister in particular, as well as previous successive governments of this country, look for a fourth wireless competitor that is robust. And the minister went further, and he wanted a remedy that was going to have a credible acquirer of Freedom Wireless. Credible meaning that they had experience as an operator.
Wait. Okay, so you're telling me that it wasn't your decision to pick Videotron. You would have picked Global Live, but the minister made you pick Videotron. That sounds like your answer. Is that your answer?
I'm walking you through the criteria that the minister laid out for us. And as we work through those criteria in terms of having a balance sheet, having operating experience, but importantly, having a very credible path to 5G. Videotron had purchased.
You would have preferred, Rogers would have preferred to accept the Global Live offer, but you felt you needed to accept lesser money from Videotron because the government wanted you to do so. That's what you're basically telling us, from what I can tell. Is it yes or no?
We went with an option that met the criteria, and ultimately the tribunal and the appeal court found.
Not my question. Not my question. Why would you accept less money? You have a duty to shareholders. Why would you accept less money unless it also came with less competition?
We had to find a solution that was pro-competitive. Price is only one factor of the variables to ensure a robust fourth carrier. We have a solution with Videotron that is the most viable in ensuring the fourth wireless competitor in Canada.
Okay, so let me put it a different way then. I don't know what's a better deal. I have no idea. We've heard testimony today. Competition Tribunal heard some testimony. Federal Court heard a hearing as well. Minister has been seized with this file. I don't know, sitting here today, what is a better deal in terms of competition? Is it Videotron? Is it Global Live? But why should you, Rogers, the most dominant player in a heavily concentrated sector that matters so much to affordability of Canadians, why should you get to decide who the fourth player is?
We went through a process together with Shaw looking at alternatives. We had many bidders. In fact, we put two other bidders.
Not my question. Why should you decide?
We went through an iterative process with the regulatory bodies. In fact,
Not my question. Why should you decide? You're the most dominant player in this marketplace. Why do you get to decide who the fourth player is? Do you think that's fair?
We went through the process to ensure the outcome was the most viable fourth player in the country.
I know these are lines you have memorized, but those are not answers to my question. Why should you get to decide? This is spectrum, by the way, that was discounted for Freedom, ultimately came to Shaw. It is a public good, ultimately. That's why the minister gets a say on the transfer of this license. Why should you get to decide who the recipient is?
We were in the position, as a result of our agreement with Shaw, to look at alternatives that were going to be the best divestiture alternative for Freedom. And we looked at the criteria that the government put in front of us, and we put forward the most viable option meeting all the criteria. And what you saw come out of... I have no idea
what that means, but I've got a question for Shaw. What happens if the deal isn't approved?
Well, that's a scary proposition. We faced a lot of challenges, in 2021 when we decided to sell the company. Those challenges and issues that we're facing haven't gotten any better. In fact, they've gotten worse. We don't have a credible path towards true 5G. We don't own the spectrum. Mr. Pallado does. That's why it makes so much sense to put Freedom and Videotron together. There's been substantial investments made by our key competitor on the wireline side of things, TELUS. We continue to be outflanked by TELUS on numerous fronts, and we're underinvesting versus others.
Rogers is the only partner that you could possibly sell to. 83% of your revenue is wireline, and that's what Rogers wants. That's
yes.
Why this is such a profitable deal for them. Is there no other partner other than Rogers?
Mr. Erskine-Smith,
no other partner other than the most dominant
we firmly believe that this set of transactions is pro-competitive and enhances competition both on the wireline and wireless side of things.
You told me the same thing about the sale of Freedom to Rogers until everyone told you it wasn't, and then you had to spin it off. So, Shaw, you painted a picture of competitors fighting the merger. And you basically said to us, if competitors are fighting the merger, then it must actually be good for competition. But let's pause for a second there, because it's not just competitors fighting the merger. It's independent experts like Ben Klass and Michael Geis. It's the majority of Canadians who are expressing concern through polling and certainly in our inboxes with this merger. And so what do you make of the fact that it isn't just competitors, but it seems to be an overwhelming majority of Canadians who don't have trust in this merger because they don't trust Shaw, they don't trust Rogers, they don't trust this heavily regulated oligopoly to deliver affordability for Canadians?
Mr. Erskine-Smith, I think we went through a very comprehensive and long regulatory process that was adjudicated through a very thoughtful tribunal that came to the conclusion that was reaffirmed yesterday by the Federal Court of Appeal about these series of transactions are pro-competitive and increase competition and will lead to better innovation, better pricing over the long term for Canadians.
Whereas what I read, and I know I'm out of time, Joel, but what I read is that this deal won't substantially lessen competition. And as I've said to others, I'm not interested in that threshold and that question. I want to see what is best for competition. And what I see right now is very wealthy individuals saying this is going to be pro-competitive, something they've said time and time and time again. And Canadians just don't trust it anymore because these wealthy individuals are wealthy at the expense of our pocketbooks for an essential service. Anyway, thanks very much for the scripted answers.